Traveling Designer Podcast. Thanks for listening. This is episode 4, and I'm your host, Rick O'Brien. So thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen. I think I inadvertently took a summer vacation. It's been quite a while since since the last podcast. I think it was in June. I have to admit, my summer did feel a little bit like a vacation. You know, I wasn't living in my camper. I would spend a lot of time in Colorado, and I, did fun stuff. I go to concerts and baseball games and go out to dinner with friends and such. So I did feel like kind of a vacation. I just got back to Washington, kind of like when school starts. I kind of feel like, I'm a kid and, doing the whole summer vacation thing. But I think the last episode, I was actually at the beginning part of my Colorado trip, and I was outside Fort Collins. Actually, I did the episode in my tent while it was raining. And since that time, I was in Colorado until August. And then I traveled through to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Tetons, Yellowstone, over to Boise, or actually to Bozeman, Montana, then through the Sawtooth, then to Boise, to Bend, and now I'm back here in Camas, Washington. So it's been a good adventure, a good time, and it's kind of some time to sit back and relax a little bit now. I do want to, if there's any of my Colorado friends listening, I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to hang out with me and take me in. And, just take the time. It was great to be able to go back and see my friends and be able to actually see people for a duration of time and not just do the quick catch-up kind of thing. It was nice to see people multiple times and, get to hear what was going on in their lives. So it was great. So on to episode 4 and the topic, and there's a couple of things I think about quite often, and especially being a traveler, this something that's come to my mind quite often as well. Is this kind of this idea that, there are two ideas, I guess. The idea that travel makes us happier people and happier beings, and also the idea for need of community. So two things, if depending, when I was a traveler, being a traveler, I obviously think about the traveling part and the happiness part, and then when I was, living in Colorado, this whole idea of community was something that was probably a bigger influence on me. But just kind of this idea that, in my opinion, they have to kind of, work together, to help balance out your life. One thing that I do for my parents' business is I do social media and marketing. So I come across these articles quite often, talking about the science behind, the fact that traveling makes us happier beings. So I was just going to throw some knowledge at you, some things that I found that I thought were interesting, kind of from the scientific aspects of things. I'm just going to read through some of these really quick. First one is says, neuroscientists have shown that new experiences can build new neural pathways in the brain. So when you travel, you can actually rewire your brain. You can bring increased creativity, and the connection between mental and physical health and creativity is clearly established in this research. Experts say that new experiences can also spark feelings of compassion. Travel makes us different people. It opens our hearts, opens our minds, and we see the world differently. Studies have proven that people have experience greater long-term happiness when they spend their money on experiences rather than things. When reminded of an experience they recently had, people feel greater happiness than remembering a thing. Remember how excited you were when you got your new iPhone, and now it's just your phone. And this actually amplifies as we get older. Over time, our satisfaction with things we buy goes down, and our satisfaction with an experience goes up. Travel is the only thing you can buy that makes us richer, and the research confirms this. Another thing I found, says travel can also promote brain health and keep your mind sharp. When your brain is introduced to new experiences and new environments, it becomes challenged and builds resistance to disease, or potentially delays disease as well. This increase in cognitive stimulation due to exposure has shown to improve both memory and concentration, particularly those with dementia. Similarly, when you travel, you interact with new people, cultures, situations, and experiences, which can contribute to the delay of onset disease. another idea, another thing I found, according to research gathered from the Farmington Heart Study, a landmark study that began in 1948 that spanned a course of 20 years. Women who vacation only 6 years or less were nearly 8 times more likely to develop heart disease or have heart attack compared to women who travel at least twice a year. Another one, taking a vacation actually improves our well-being and mood. In addition to helping us feel happier and more relaxed, traveling can reduce burnout and make us feel like we are better able to handle our jobs when we return. In addition to improving our mood, taking time off work for vacation is associated with a number of better physical outcomes, including fewer health complaints and improved sleep. And the last one, and maybe my favorite, is traveling can help us practice gratitude. Traveling is also a great way to help us recognize how fortunate we are. Through our interaction with different people and the ways of life, traveling can help us realize our privilege and all the things we should be thankful for. Gratitude has been shown time and time again to help us live happier and healthier lives. Reflecting on the differences between the places we visit and our life back home, and being grateful for all that we have, including the means of travel, we can also help us feel more content. As a bonus, traveling and having the opportunity to meet others with different level of social economic backgrounds can also help us be more accepting of diversity and compassionate towards others. I think that's pretty cool stuff, and I can definitely, attest to all of that, a lot, especially the excitement part. The one thing that I do is I'm not a planner. That is one thing I'm really awful at. But the time I will plan, is when I decide, to do a leg decide to travel somewhere. I usually kind of feel like I do things in like legs. The first thing I will, do is, start looking for campgrounds or boondocking sites and stuff. When when you got a big camper, I want to be prepared. So I want to, look for places, and I'll look for, hikes and stuff along the way as well. But that gets me excited, just to, start to plan, a rough kind of outline of a trip gets me super excited. I think the thing I like about traveling the most is this idea of going down a new road or going to a new place or a new town or a new park, driving down, seeing something you've never seen before is like highly exciting for me. And it's something that, I think really gets me going, and the thing that's I like the most about traveling. And there's also, going back to places. I just had the opportunity to go to two of my favorite places. I might have told this part of the story before in one of the other podcasts, but when you're in Jackson Hole and you're traveling towards the Tetons and Highway 191, you're driving and you can't see the Tetons quite yet. There's some like kind of hills that are in the way, but I've done that little stretch so many times that I know, like when you come around this bend, that the whole Teton range opens up, and like my heart starts pounding when I get close. So I get super excited for some of those places that are just like near and dear to your heart. When I was trying to figure out what to do for this episode, I actually put a small little video up on YouTube to try to get people to tell their stories about travel and such. And one of my friends, I was having a beer with, and he told a story to me, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase it, but he travels a lot for work, and he had to meet some of his colleagues on a remote location. They were somewhere in Colorado, so he decided to take the weekend before and go see some new places. So, he went to a new town and, had a chance to try some new beer and food and met some people. And then he stumbled across what he said was the coolest campground that he's ever been to, and camped out for the weekend. And then when he met his colleagues on that Monday, someone quickly, said like, wow, you look really happy. Just this whole idea of like getting out for a little adventure and seeing some new things. And, I kind of told him usually, the best places you find are usually the places you just kind of stumble across or someone kind of tells you about along the way. So, that was, I think, a really good story. And when I was actually back in Colorado, a friend of mine that smart kid, but probably isn't someone that doesn't really like tell me, he's perceptive as well, but doesn't really share those kinds of things. But definitely said, when I saw him the year before, like how he said that I looked like I was very happy and very content, so I thought that was kind of cool that he kind of saw that and actually took the time to, tell me all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I mean, I don't think you have to be like a full-time traveler, or you don't have to spend a lot of money, to, find adventure, right? I don't know how many people that I've known in, big cities who don't even migrate out of their own neighborhood, and when I used to live in Boulder, I always would take maybe 1 or 2 trips a year. I always went to San Francisco to go to Harley Strictly Bluegrass, and I'd spend a week in the city. And, but other time, I would always do something for my birthday. I'd go, up to the mountains and go snowshoeing, or, try to find like a little town I've never been to, or take a drive or a new hike. I think all those things, can help. All those things are part of the adventure, and all those things can stimulate your brain and puts you at peace. Another thing, I don't know if this is really relatable, and actually did mention it above a little bit, is when I lived in Colorado as well, I had sometimes really had a hard time sleeping. I'd go through these pockets of time where, it would take me hours to fall asleep, or I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just not be able to fall back to sleep. And when I started traveling, it didn't happen to me once until, over the winter I was in Bend and I was in one place, so I was kind of back to kind of like a normal kind of life, and it happened a couple of times, and it actually happened one time in Colorado when I was spent a lot of time in one place. So it's kind of interesting that, when I'm traveling and I'm in my camper, and I'm driving down the road, I'm looking for, meeting people, and I'm, trying to find places to camp, and you're trying to get your work done, and, weird things happen and such, like I'm definitely mentally and physically tired, by the time the day's over, and I just always seem to sleep, so it's definitely a cure for that as well. So, being a full-time traveler, and I guess according to everything I just said, and pardon my language here, but I'm going to do this just to make a point, is maybe I must be the fucking happiest person on the planet, right? But that kind of leads into the other thought, is this need for community, this need to belong, this need to give back and, be part of something and feel connected to something or someone, to kind of be like Norm from Cheers, a place where everybody knows your name. And I've always kind of liked this idea of community, and when I first started traveling, I kind of had a hard time with it, because when I lived in Colorado, I had my community of friends, and I helped out with a couple networking events and helped plan, and I always had all these amazing friends who were doing a lot more amazing things than I was ever doing, but trying to do my best to support all of them. And then when I was on the road, all that was kind of gone, and I kind of told myself, like, everywhere you go, is my community, which is correct in theory. We all live in this, large community. We're all trying to get by and do the right thing and do good and, help each other out, but I just don't think that deeper connection of community was there. Even when I was in Bend, where I spent 6 months, I don't really think that was fully embraced, and maybe it was because I knew I was leaving, or maybe even just the energy of what I put out, I knew I was leaving, so I wasn't really quite there, so I think that whole idea of not being able to give back was kind of the thing that was mostly always on my mind, and I was trying to figure out a way to kind of do that. And I guess what I've been trying to do over the last few months, and I don't know if this is cheesy or not, but I guess I've been just trying to do a better job of being like just open and present when I'm out in the world, which, like I said, might be like a little strange, but it's amazing how, just if you're, going to a town and you go to a coffee shop, or you're at a brewery or a restaurant or whatever, just to, get off your phone or off your headphones and make eye contact with people. And I have to admit, having my dog Mazzy helps a lot, because I can go to a lot of places and everybody wants to, pet her and know about her. But I think this idea of this kind of opening yourself up, it's amazing how many people will come up to you and just start talking, and how many people actually, want to talk and start conversations. And it's so amazing to like learn people's stories and, get to know, locals and other people in that way. So I've feel like I could do an entire podcast just on stories that I've heard over the last 2.5 years. So I guess ultimately, from all that, I kind of feel like what community means to me now is is giving a helping hand, giving an open ear when needed. And I think if we do all these things, I think that the deeper idea of community will kind of take care of itself. As I've started to think about this kind of thing and trying to take it a step further, I have to admit I'm not fully confident. I think that we were all meant to be in one place. If you kind of look back in history, we've only been stationary beings now for like 10,000 years. For the better part of 2.5 million years or so, when humans have been around, we've mostly been nomads. Humans were tethered to the herds and the flocks and to edibles and the climate shifts that occurred with all of that. And so people traveled, ate, and lived light. So it's not a huge mental leap to think that our biological default setting was actually set to be nomads and be nomadic. It wasn't until people started making land produce, and then having to build houses close to their crops, and with surpluses of food, people started having to build villages, and villages became cities, and then as urbanization and all that kind of stuff kind of occurred, globalization helped us immensely. No longer do we have to sail across the sea to buy fruits and spices and all this kind of stuff. Like, all this stuff is basically down the street. And granted, if you live outside the city, it might take a little bit more, but essentially our lives have been built, or society has been built to be engineered for comfort and convenience. So I always kind of have this like weird analogy that I'm allergic to like all these foods. I can't eat soy and I can't eat dairy, which I think a lot of people can't. Because I don't believe our bodies are evolved enough to process those things. I'm not really quite sure that our brains or our body we're processed enough to like be in one place. And I think that's why this idea of travel is such a strong thing to so many people. So ultimately, I don't really know, for me, I can say I think it's finding this balance of how these two things can, work together, and I'm not about to say like these are the two things that create happiness, because I, very much know that, happiness and lack of happiness has lots of different reasons, lots of different means, and there's lots of things that are involved in that. But these are just two things I feel that, at least for me, that kind of create these kinds of things. And it's all, like I said, it's all about balance. When I was in Denver, I was turned on. I met another full-time RVer who turned me on to this event in Bend, with all these RVers got together for a week through this group called the Escapers. And I was, I had to go. It was funny because where the event was literally 7 miles from where my camper was being stored for the summer. So I beelined it to Bend and spent the week there, and it was amazing. Like, all these people just like me, most of them, like I say, full-time workers as well, so people in my demographic, my age group. But it was and then hearing all their stories, because lots of these people travel together, and even after the event was over, a lot of them stayed in the Bend area together and traveled, or stayed there for like another week, and then doing all, little groups, go this way and that way to travel together. So I think they found a good balance of having that community and traveling together, and then obviously being able to have the happiness of seeing new places and doing all this cool stuff. So I I think that was one aspect of the balance that I personally don't do well in. I've basically travel almost by myself. So I think that kind of turned me on to, a better way of finding some balance and creating that community in that way. So I think the one thing it basically taught me is, you got to make an effort. You can't make excuses to do things. Like if there's something out there that you need to find, it's out there. If it's trying to get out and explore more, or if it's out, if you're, on the exploring side, it's, going out and finding the people, finding that community and make things happen in your life. I just got together with a friend for a drink a couple nights ago, and she definitely kind of reminded me of that, about how, you've got to have the confidence, you just got to go out and make things happen, and most of the time we always have these excuses why we don't make things happen. But most of the time, if you have the good energy to do it, basically good things, usually happen. So ultimately get out there and find your balance and, find what works for you. I do find it amazing how I feel like, there's more unhappiness going on in the world right now than, that I've seen. And, because we think about, our lives are so much simpler now than they were, 100 years ago, 200, 500 years ago, but it seems like our happiness levels maybe aren't. So I think, we all kind of take control of our lives to be able to, do what's best for us and, block out all the other things of other people and, do what's best for you. If you take care of yourself, you can take care of others. So I think that's one thing I've definitely learned. So that is what I've got for this episode. I have a couple quick quotes that I always like to end with, and then time to move on. The first one is an anonymous quote, but I think was actually something that was said kind of earlier in some of the scientific things, saying that travel is the only thing you can buy that makes you richer, which I firmly agree with. And, I think this other quote is from Dan Rather. It says, "If all difficulties were known at the outset of a long journey, most of us would never start out at all," which I think kind of goes into, some of the stuff isn't easy, to get out there and, travel more if that's what you want to do, or try to immerse yourself in a community to find the right people. I know all that stuff is easier said than done, but usually it brings something that's worthwhile in the end. So that's episode 4. Thanks for everyone for listening, and happy exploring. To listen to all the episodes and to read my blog, go to www.travelingdesigner.co. That's www.travelingdesigner.co.